All right. As we go through these, we're going to look at 5 aspects of doing a webinar. And if I don't cover something, it's because it's exactly the same way I talked about it for informative speeches. I'm only going to talk about the differences here. And those differences are regarding tech, the structure, talk in some depth about how to use slides, rehearsing and performing this thing, and how to handle questions and answers. Basic tech. Now, I'm talking basic here. I don't expect you to have a fully equipped studio or anything like that, but you will probably need a workstation, meaning a table and a chair. You'll want to adjust your camera so that it's at about eye level. Okay. And if that means propping your laptop up on some books, then prop your laptop up on some books. If you have to make a choice, better to have the camera slightly above eye level and looking down at you than slightly below and looking up. Okay? Looking up always ends up, first of all, with bad shadows, and you look like we're looking up your nose. Okay, so, but really try to keep it straight on. Any camera will do. I'm certainly not critiquing the quality of your laptop camera. You'll need a mic, and the only thought, and it can be a built-in mic, again, not a problem, but my only thought about that is that you rehearse it and record your rehearsals so that you can hear how loud you need to be, and just play with how quiet you can be and how loud you can be, because we don't have a regular space for you guys to work in. So get a feel for that with the microphone. Lighting, again, I'm not expecting miraculous lighting, but try to look for a spot where your face is lit. Yeah. I mean, I can take this particular computer that I have here on this particular table, and I've played with this all semester. And if I turn it around to here, you'll notice I've got a weird shadow down this side of my face. I'm at the same table. I haven't gone anywhere. But I took a moment to look at the situation and figure out that, okay, this is slightly better lighting. Okay. Again, I'm not looking for you to have umbrellas and lamps on stands and all of that stuff. But make sure we can see you, and ideally pick the best lighted area that you have access to. Your position. You want to be, and play with this, you want to be far enough that your head is in the top of the frame. Okay? You don't want to be so close that you're cut off like this. You don't want to be so far back that you're down like this. Okay? Keep your head at the top of the frame, and that can be a little bit tricky if you need to reach for the keyboard. You have short arms, because I'm a short person. So fiddle around with that a little bit. My camera doesn't have zoom capabilities, but if you push the screen back, it adjusts things for you a little bit. And that's really all I'm looking for in tech. Any webinar is composed of those 4 things: your workstation, your camera and mic, your lighting, and your position. Whether you have fancy equipment or simple equipment, those are the 4 things you're talking about in any studio situation. Basic structure. Maybe you remember this slide. I borrowed it from the slideshow when we went over the basic structure of a speech many months ago. It does feel like a long time ago since the beginning of this class, doesn't it?
It really does. This has been a really long semester.
Long semester, like a year and a half long.
Like
I'm,
March was a year and not a month.
what about a month?
It's like March was a year itself and not a month.
Yes, yes. Isn't it though?
On that one.
Okay. You're going to need an introduction. For a webinar, if you remember the points of an introduction are the topic, the main points, the attention getter, connection to the audience, and your credibility. You're going to need your topic, you're going to need your main points. You'll probably need an attention getter. Depending on the audience in any webinar, you may or may not need a connection. Yeah. Remember, this is in a webinar outside of this classroom. The people are there because they want to be. And that means they probably already have a connection. But again, you could be in a business situation where people don't quite get why they have to attend this webinar. So maybe you do want to make the connection. Think about it a little bit. Credibility, your credibility is the same thing. I mean, maybe the group is there because of who you are and your expertise, and you don't need to explain that to them. Maybe you do. So you can modify the introduction. The body is still going to consist, in this case, of a 3 to 5 minute speech of 2 to 4 main points. Keep them clear, keep them distinct. Conclusion is going to be the same. You're going to have your main points, you're going to have your topic, and you're going to have your ta-da ending. Okay. And you're going to say thank you at the end of it. The transitions are interesting because they can be kind of subtle. In this presentation, maybe I don't need to say things like, or maybe I do. Okay, so let's talk about the structure of a webinar. Because in this case, I've got slides up here. Right? And I have it structured so that each slide is a transition, is my next topic. Let's see if I can make that point with you guys. Those are the slides you're going to see. And that is how this is broken down. So maybe I don't need to hit the transitions quite as hard verbally because they're there on this thing. Again, just play around with it, see what works. Do it in front of people. Okay, slides, PowerPoint. Or in my case, I use LibreOffice, which, in case you don't know, there's LibreOffice and OpenOffice. They're essentially free versions of Microsoft Office, and they're completely free and available online. Hint, tip, I got lots of friends who use them because they're free and available online. You're gonna be expected to use these in your webinar. Yeah. And I want to go over some basics of any presentation aids first. Okay. First of all, show them when you're talking about them, all presentation aids. Make them go away when you're not. You probably noticed how when I turned that slide off, you're suddenly looking back at me again. Okay. Particularly with slides, these things steal focus from you like crazy. But that's true of any presentation aid. When you're finished with it, put it out of sight. Make it big enough to be seen by everybody. If you're in a public situation, for a webinar, that usually means at least a 24-point font. And general rule of thumb, I mean, font size changes depending on the font too, but this is a good size. This is 24 point. A good place to start. But if you're, again, doing this publicly, make sure everybody can see it. Keep it simple. I rarely use more than one graphic on a slide. Simply because if I start putting more graphics up here, you're just going to look at the graphics. One gets your attention, 3 starts confusing people. Keep it simple. And along with keeping it simple and showing it when you need it, I had 2 more. I remember one of them. That's annoying. Can I go look at something real fast?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Lost my train of thought completely. Oh. Okay, I had all of them. I just lost my mind. Which is possible too. Anyway, what I was saying, keep them simple, put them away, make sure they can be seen by everybody. And the 4th thing, oh damn, my mind is just gone. You're watching me totally screw up here.
It
Oh,
happens.
it's okay. I appreciate it, and I want you to appreciate the fact that I'm screwing up totally, and people screw up in speeches and in webinars. Rehearse with them. Rehearse with any props you have. Rehearse with any handouts you have. Anything that you need to work with up here, okay? Rehearse with it. It's going to handle differently. When you practice your webinar, practice with the slides. Okay? Learn how this rolls out. Particularly using slides, as I've said, you can make them do this. Not that. Does anyone know how I did that?
Just click it.
Nope. I hit the B key.
Get them to blank out.
B for blank, W for white.
Oh,
Okay. This works when you're projecting them too, by the way. And any key to go back. So if you want to do that, practice that. You'll notice my slides for the whole course are useless without my lecture. If I don't know how many of you went back at the midterms and looked at the slides from earlier in the course. By themselves, they're not worth much of anything. Okay, they're simply an outline of major concepts. It doesn't explain a damn thing. That's deliberate. If I could do this course by just putting all the information on slides, you wouldn't need me. And I believe, maybe because I teach public speaking, that talking to you, even talking to you from 60 miles away, is better than just a slideshow. If you could learn this material with a slideshow, why not just send you massive slideshows at the beginning of the course and be done with it? So these are meant to be reminders. They're meant to be guides to concepts, but never put a slide out there that is what you're saying anyway. So be careful of that. Something to watch out for. Rehearsal and performance. Rehearsing. You have to rehearse. And I strongly urge you, before you do these next week, to record your rehearsals. Record 2 or 3 of them, if you can, on your laptop. If you can't, let me know, and I will make Zoom available for you so you can go in by yourself and just do a recording. I do that from time to time. I'll just launch a Zoom thing for myself and jump in and rehearse. And then I can go back and look at the recording. Physical delivery is a little bit different. You want to practice staring at that camera, and I'm not good at it. Used to be. I've lost that, and I need to get it back again. Because your eye wants to go to what's moving on the screen, and that's probably you over there. If you notice, if I look at you here, okay, I'm looking at you. The minute my eye goes over here, it's real obvious I'm not looking at you anymore. I'm looking at that screen. So practice that as far as eye contact goes. It's real easy to forget about facial aspect, facial expressions up here, because there's not another human being over there giving you facial expressions back again. Even in a regular public speaking situation, you normally have that. You have an audience that you can see, and you can tell if they're smiling, and you'll smile back. You really have to be conscious to do facial expressions when you're doing this. Gestures, same thing, they describe and they emphasize, but this time they're at chest height. And I suggest that you sit, I'm about 9 inches away from the table here. I've pushed my chair back so that when I bring my hands up to gesture, I don't slap them on the bottom of the table. I don't have to worry about pulling them up and around. They just come up. The rest of the time they're sitting in my lap. Okay. For posture, sit up. Sit up, shoulders back. I'm not leaning on the back of the chair right now. Let me move this camera out a little bit. Okay. I'm not leaning back. The minute I lean back, it goes like this. And I'm sure you can tell the difference. You don't want me lecturing like this unless I'm just telling you stories or whatever. You're expecting people to be here. You can also get too close. Be aware of that. There's a range you can work with from here to perhaps here. The rest of it's pretty much the same. Vocal delivery, really the only difference is volume. Everything else applies. Variety in pitch, variety in rate, pronunciation, pauses, all of that still counts here. Pauses, I guess, are interesting because, again, you're not getting that feedback from the audience. So you don't automatically pause to look at your audience. So you might want to build some pauses in if you rehearse this and you find you're going too fast. In my rehearsals, I've discovered that I go too slowly. I'm waiting for reactions. I've been doing this long enough that I know where to wait for you guys to say something or look at me some way or whatever. And I've got so many of those built into these lectures at this point, and I just have to tighten it up. It's just deadly slow without you being there. As far as handling notes, put them probably, I wish I had a piece of paper here, and I don't. Put them on the edge of your laptop. If you have a way to prop them up, maybe you can put them behind the camera, but they shouldn't be visible to the audience. It's just easier. I mean, I have a table down here. You should see this. I have a table, okay? It's not in the camera, so I can put my notes here. The closer you can get the notes to the camera, the less your eye contact has to break to look down at your notes. So if you are good at this, you're using those big fonts again, and you're glancing down to notes that are just on the laptop under the camera. Okay? If you need the keyboard, keep that clear. But try not to have your notes, just like you wouldn't, on the lectern, have them right up against your body, because then you got to do this. All right, before we get to Q&A, any questions about any of this so far? I know I'm rushing.
So when we perform this,
Uh-huh.
I'm just, maybe just me, but I'm gonna need instructions on like how to share my screen and whatnot.
Oh, we'll do that before the class is over today.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to give you all the controls. Everybody in the class is going to have a shot at the controls before it's over today.
Okay.
And if you want to rehearse some more, again, ask me, and I will open up a confirmed meeting just for you, and you can sit there and play with it. Okay?
Okay.
Give me a little notice. I mean, I do have other classes. Don't write to me and say, I need this open in 10 minutes. But give me a time, and I'll open it for you. Not a problem. And maybe I will or won't look at your recording. Probably not. Any other questions? Okay. How to handle Q&A. First of all, prepare. Now, you can't possibly know what questions other people are coming up with. What you can do is find somebody, if you're hanging out with somebody, and have them ask you questions and practice handling them. They won't be the same questions the class asks, but you can practice how to do this. In fact, thinking out loud here, maybe if you and someone in the class want to get together and share a Zoom session together, you could actually help each other out. You need to look confident when it comes to answering questions. Don't let them rattle you. Okay? When you're finished, you say, thank you. Are there any questions? Smile. You're ready. You're good to go. You got this. Okay? Somebody will ask you a question, you call on them. Yes, Kelly. Kelly asks a question. You are allowed to stop for a moment and think about the answer. You don't have to just jump out with an answer. It will sound more thoughtful if you take a beat or two to think about the answer. Another part of being confident is holding still. This is important all the way through the webinar, but becomes very important during the Q&A. If you're standing in front of a live audience and you mess with your hair, that's a small thing, you're far away. When I do that here on camera, it's much more obvious. People are paying much more attention to, oh, she's messing with her hair, oh, look at her hair, it's all separated in some weird way there. her roots are showing, she's fiddling with her glasses. All of that stuff shows. In Q&A, it makes you look nervous. So just hold still. Just hold still. If you're not sure what the question is, ask. So are you talking about when I was discussing publishing, or when I was discussing the writing process? You can ask questions back if you don't know what they're talking about. Like I said, think about your answer. Okay. And then if you're really good, you check in with them because you know you're good, and you say something on the order of, did that answer your question? Gives them a shot at a follow-up if you've made them think of something else. Okay. But normally most people will say, yeah, that's great, thank you. It's a way of closing this conversation out and moving on to the next person. And that's Q&A. Are there any questions about questions and answers?
What if you don't know the answer?
If you don't know the answer, be honest about it. I'm sorry, I honestly don't know the answer to that one. Leave me your email. I'll get back to you on it, though. It's the best you can do.
Okay.
Don't make up stuff. Any other questions?
I have a question. Is there a minimum of responses that you have to give, or like questions that you have to?
I hadn't thought about that. It's a good question. I'd say at least 2. Let's see if you can roll through 2 of them. How's that sound?
Okay.
Any other questions?
Would it be okay to have at least like 2 pictures on the slide, or should we just stick to 1?
You're going to do your own slides?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you all know how to use PowerPoint?
No. If I could add a picture, like how many pictures should we be able to add? Because I have 2 on 1.
Okay. Let's see. For this slideshow, I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No, wrong. Those are blanks. Are they? I have 9, and I just did, what time is it?
3:40?
I just did about half an hour with 9 slides. So, I mean, you've got to have a title slide, you've got to have your main point slide. For 3 to 5 minutes, I'd say 3 to 5 more slides. That's about all you can work in. Okay, don't get carried away with the slides. Well, all right, I can get even more mathematical. Because we all love math, right? I said 2 to 4 main points. If you have a title slide, if you have a main point slide, you have 4 main points, and you're going to have a wrap-up slide, and I'm going to show you in a minute. You can do the math on that. If you construct it that way with a slide for each of your main points, you can tell pretty easily how many slides you need. If you don't want to do it that way, which is fine, I just find this is very clear, very clean way to do it. If you want more or fewer, that's fine. Just make sure that they're clear and they're there for a reason. I could see a speech, for instance, where it wasn't by main points, it was by key ideas. I don't know. I don't want to lock you into too much here. Any other questions? As I practice looking at the camera. Okay, so today we talked about tech, doing tech through a webinar. We talked about the structure of a webinar. and adjustments you make to the informative speech. We talked about how to use slides. We talked about rehearsing and performing your webinar and how to handle questions and answers. And next week, it's your turn. And there, ladies and gentlemen, was a webinar on how to do a webinar.
Very good job.
Except that I completely lost my point there. But otherwise, that's how you do it.
Just had a question on the kind of topics that we could choose. Any kind of informative speech, is that what you will choose?
The same rules apply. Choose something that you're interested in, so choose something you know something about, choose something you can get.
I think we lost her.
Yeah, oh, there she is.
I seem to have dropped out and I'm back again.
Yeah, I think in between it got cut.
What I was saying was, yeah, it froze on me too, and then I disappeared. What I was saying was, if you'll notice, the slides I was using are very basic. Don't get carried away with the tech. Your grade depends on your speech and your speech making. And there may be people in this room who want to get all artsy with these or something. Don't. If you look at what I've done here, that's as simple as it gets. Okay. I have not spent a lot of time on these slides, and yet they work. Very basic slides can work. Some of the things I did was I moved the picture around so it wasn't in the same place all the time. You notice the picture travels a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it. I chose a font that I thought, popped up well. I picked a template and sort of matched the colors to the template. One of the things I did here is I used the same 2 fonts throughout, 3 fonts. This one for the overview. This font and this color is exactly the font and the color I use on each slide that's connected to it. And then this. That's my 3rd font. And again, same thing that I used in the, this is just from experience, all right? This is not anything from a textbook. Keep it simple as far as the design elements go. The fancier I get, the more time I spend trying to find fancy fonts and make everything beautiful, the more confused the slide gets. Keep it simple, keep it consistent, you're good. In this case, I had a lot to say here. I used a slightly smaller font than I wanted to. I squeezed the picture down here a little bit. The images are simply Google search images. One heads up on images. In the academic world, you can use any images you want. Be aware that out there in the working world, there is such a thing as copyright.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, don't run around stealing people's images any more than you would steal their words. Look for something that's not copyrighted or something you have permission for in the real world. Okay, because a webinar is going out over the web. It's pretty easy to track images these days once they show up on the web. So just be aware of that. Again, in the academic world, you can use them all because it's educational purposes, but outside of that, not so much.